everybody. Welcome to the Covert Report with Susan Lindauer. How are you this morning? We're going to have a great show today with Gary Byrne. He is the ex-Secret Service agent who wrote the book Crisis of Character about Hillary Clinton, and he has exposed the corruption and tantrums and abuse that Hillary Clinton has become famous for, and really exposes that she is not a woman for the people as she has been saying. Hi, Gary. This is Susan Lindauer. Gary, give everybody the background of how long you worked with Hillary, how long you saw Hillary in action.
I actually worked in the Secret Service Uniform Division from 1991 to 2003, and I was protected the Clintons for the entire 8 years that they were there from the early 90s until they left office.
Oh my. So you saw all the dirt with Monica Lewinsky. Okay, let's start with Hillary and her personality and her style, because she's depicting herself as a woman of the people. She's trying very hard to say that she's for all of us, and she's very responsible and controlled and steady.
Well, first of all, Hillary Clinton you see on TV is fictitious, and she tries to say she's the person of the people, but it depends on what people you're talking about. She just called Donald Trump supporters deplorables. So that's about half of the country. Hillary Clinton says whatever the polls tell her to say. She is, as I depict in my book, Crisis of Character, she is a cold, distant, very angry person that has showed many times, I talk about this in my book, the disdain for the military, for law enforcement. She's like a dictator. She walks around screaming and yelling at people. And a good example of this is actually, if you look at one of the latest scandals, the email server from when she was in the State Department, the scandal that just won't go away. Now we find out through leaked emails and testimony from Buba Abedin, they were so afraid of her, the way she treated them, and afraid of being fired, that instead of making her use the proper security on her handheld device, they were running around destroying them with hammers and then giving her new devices. I mean, how does that ever fit into normal operation? I mean, it's incredible. I worked for the government for 29 years, and if you purposely destroyed a device, they would make you pay for it, and then they'd pull your security clearance. It was insane when you think about it on that level. The Hillary Clinton I know is just incredibly angry, and obviously, if you take the time to realize and do a little research on your own, she's completely incompetent.
Yes, completely incompetent. Absolutely. I can't even tell you how ironic it is to hear Hillary get away with all. I was a CIA asset myself, and I'm not going to go into my story. We've got to talk about your story, but I understand what you're saying here. She has broken so many laws that if anybody else did the same things, we'd get 30 years in federal prison.
Yeah. Let's look at the Hillary Clinton from the early 1970s. She's this young attorney. And at the time, the U.S. government was embroiled in this scandal called Watergate with President Richard Nixon. A Democrat that was in charge of the investigation hired her as a young lawyer on the Watergate investigation. Shortly after he hired her, he fired her. And he fired her because he said she was dishonest. She was caught manipulating records and lying. Now think about that. That's when she's a brand new lawyer. And then she goes down to Arkansas and hooks up with her old boyfriend, Bill Clinton, who gets her a job. And then from there, it's like, everything she's ever touched is supposed to be flowers and gold, but the truth is she's been a complete disaster with everything she's touched. And the only reason she ever kept any of those jobs seemed like because her husband was either the attorney general or the governor of the state. You fast forward to when they get in when she gets in the office and President Clinton gets elected, and have no doubt in your mind, when the American people elected Bill Clinton president of the United States in the early 90s, they elected Bill, and they got Bill and Hillary. And if Hillary gets elected, we're going to get Hillary and Bill. And it'll be another 4 to 8 years of one scandal to the next. We're already seeing it. I mean, with the email server scandal, it won't go away.
Well, now, let's talk about what you saw in the White House. Describe typical experiences between Hillary and Bill.
So when the cameras were on, or they were going to an event and there were people around, she tried to act normal or act friendly, so to speak. But when the cameras were off and there was nobody around but the Secret Service and the staff, the real Hillary Clinton comes out. And that's somebody who's angry, nasty. She gets wrapped around the axle on these little bitty things. One day when I was in tours, I go to talk to these three women. They're supposed to give me some information on a tour that's going to happen that day that I'm involved in. And when I go up to find them in the second floor of the East Wing social office, they're in this like really intense meeting, and they're you can see there's fear in their eyes. I'm like, is there something wrong? Should I know about something? They're like, no, everything's fine, Gary. And then they proceed to tell me that one of them had allowed an intern to order some stationery, which you wouldn't normally do, I guess. And the intern made a mistake with the stationery, and they ordered tens of thousands of dollars of stationery that couldn't be used. So they weren't worried about the thousands and thousands of dollars of government money, taxpayer money that was wasted. They were terrified of who was going to tell Hillary. And I said, well, the one lady, I said, did you used to work with her at the Rose Law Firm? She goes, yes. And I know what's going to happen. She's going to scream and yell and raise holy hell, and then she's going to demand somebody get fired. And I don't want to go back to Arkansas yet, and those kind of things. And I was like, really? And I was really taking me back. These women were strong women. They were in their 60s. They were pretty tough girls, but they were terrified of her because they had already seen, and everything we heard about the Clintons before they left Arkansas when they were just running, that their spin doctors said, oh, it was just Arkansas politics. None of it's true. It all came true. He was a womanizer. She helped protect him, no matter how many women that he damaged or allegedly assaulted, had affairs with. She was involved in protecting him from the backlash, and everything that she seemed to touch turns to a disaster. And she's always angry. All the stories about her angry and their fights all came true.
When they would fight, what would it be like? Describe one of their fights.
Well, one time there was an incident on the east side of the White House with some guests that were coming in. And I won't go into the whole story. I don't want to waste too much time. But so just cut the story short, Mrs. Clinton gets aggravated over something that happens that involves the Secret Service uniform division. Instead of finding out what the problem was and the details and fixing it herself, this is the real Hillary Clinton. She goes into this rage. She was so angry that the other officers that were posted on that side called me in the West Wing and said, hey, heads up. Here comes the First Lady. There was an incident over here. Here's what happened. And she's on her way over. Look out. So she comes over. She goes into the Oval Office, and she berates the president for 40 minutes. She's yelling and screaming about the uniform division. She's cussing like a drunken sailor. And I don't mind the cussing, but at one point it got so hot and heated that she's demanding that the president fire 1,000 people in the uniform division. Yeah. So, yeah, this is the woman of the people, right? She wants to fire the entire uniform division. She's
fire all of the Secret Service who are guarding the White House.
Yeah, all the uniform division officers. She wants them fired. At some point, it got so heated, and I'm standing outside in the hallway, and the agent that's posted out there. It was so loud that we closed some of the outer doors by the Roosevelt Room, by the press lobby, that kind of thing. But you could still hear it, standing right where we were, where our post was. And at some point, the agent looks over at me and goes, "Oh my God, he's actually defending you guys." And I'm like, how bizarre is it?
He was defending you. Are you the Secret Service?
Yeah, he was defending the Secret Service uniform division because she had just gone right off the reservation. And I'm telling you, 40 minutes is not an exaggeration of how long she berated him. And then when she walked out, she jumped out and went over to her office in the West Wing, at the legal counsel's office. That's just one example that I cite in my book, Crisis of Character.
Wow. No, that's serious. Now, Hillary has tried to, I hate to say this, but she's tried to censor you. She's tried very hard to block you from,
Yeah.
Has the corporate media, the CNN, how's that going?
So what happened is when the book first got leaked out that this book was coming out, nobody knew what was in it. Nobody had any idea what was in the book. Nobody knew.
It's a great book.
So nobody knew what was in the book, and so CNN, we already had like appointments to go on Fox, CNN, one of the morning talk shows, not Good Morning America, but the other one, the Today Show. Anyway, CNN contacts us and says they're going to schedule us for all these shows. All we have to do is send them a copy of the book, and we said, "Oh, no problem. All you have to do is sign a confidentiality agreement." "Oh, no, just send us the book." And we're like, "No, we don't send the book unless you sign a confidentiality agreement." So then as soon as we refused to send them a copy of the book without making them sign the confidentiality agreement, all these supposed scheduled shows that I was supposed to do on CNN disappeared. And then the other CBS, NBC, it all followed. And then the stories started coming out from other news agencies that she had demanded, that her campaign had demanded that they blacklist and use the same coercion and threats that the Clinton machine has done all these years. And they buckled to it. But here's the funny thing. Not so much now, but when the book first came out, you could turn on any one of those shows, any one of those stations in the morning, and they were up there slandering me and defaming me and calling me a liar, but they wouldn't let me on for the 10 minutes I needed to defend myself. And so actually we've taken up legal, we're suing David Brock and Media Matters. We're suing the Retired Secret Service Agents Association. They had these two guys on that used to be former Secret Service agents that weren't even there when I was there. One of the guys I actually trained when I was an instructor to come into the Secret Service. And then they're up there slandering me. I talked to so-and-so, and there's no way he could have seen all that. They don't have a clue what went on there. And here's the bottom line. If I didn't know what I know, what I say in my book, Crisis of Character, isn't true, why was I subpoenaed 6 times? I was the first person in the history of the Secret Service to ever be subpoenaed to testify against the sitting president in a criminal case, and that was the Monica Lewinsky case. I was eventually ordered to testify by the Supreme Court Justice Rehnquist or go to jail. So everything in my book is true. A lot of it's testimony, and that's just the pressure and the unfairness that the Clintons used to keep themselves in power. It's all about them staying in power, in my opinion, to keep themselves out of jail in some cases. And we saw that, you could easily make that connection with what we saw with Director Comey and the Attorney General and that little meeting. So everything they do, it seems to be, there's a reason they were referred to as the Arkansas Mafia down when they were still living in Arkansas.
So they use threats, intimidation, harassment.
Yes.
She behaves like a tyrant. She behaves like a dictator personality.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. When you read my book, and I say put to your listeners, put it in this context. If you walked into your pediatrician's office, the doctor that takes care of your kids, or the mechanic that fixes the car that you drive around with your kids in, and you saw them treating their employees like that, or screaming and yelling over something like that, you would never do business with them again because they look crazy. And it's not acceptable behavior. You don't treat people like that. And then when you look at the mistakes that she's made over the years, I mean, let's look at this incident in Benghazi, the 9/11 in 2012, the attack in Benghazi. She proved right there beyond a shadow of a doubt that she is no leader. A leader would have sent help. A leader would have not left. First of all, a leader would have answered the 600 emails and requests for security. She sent that ambassador there to do the job that she asked him to do, and then didn't send him the proper security and equipment that he needed. And then when the attack started, a handful of DSS agents, State Department security agents, and some contractors from the CIA that were down the road fought for 13 hours with a couple $100,000, maybe $100,000 or more of small arms, when hundreds of millions of dollars of U.S. government equipment and men and women were sitting around waiting to be told to go and help these people, and nobody sent, not the President of the United States and certainly not Hillary Clinton.
Let's talk about what you saw. I really want to focus on your book, but
that's right.
You are special because you were there. Now, I want to talk about the Hillary Clinton's, what she calls the bimbos. Now, everybody, this is so important because Hillary Clinton has a history of attacking Donald Trump as a sexist and for abusiveness towards women. She's accusing Trump of being a desperate sexist, but in fact, her treatment of women is very bad.
Yes, it's incredible. So her husband is got to be one of the worst people in the world as far as what he's been accused of doing. And some of it I know is factually true because I was forced to testify about it when it came to his relationship with the intern Monica Lewinsky. But the other thing that you're talking about is he's been accused of all these things, and they always say, oh, it's not true. And this is one of the women. They described her as, this is what you get when you drag a $100 bill through an Arkansas trailer park. Well, my next question is, okay, what do you call the other end of the string? If that's what you're calling her, what's the guy, Bill Clinton, on the other end of the string? What do you call him? And why is it that every woman that he's accused of having
he's a horn dog. Let's use the word. Right. He's a horn dog.
He is, but why is it every woman all of a sudden she gets slut shamed? And let's investigate and see what happens. And if these things weren't true, now I know for a fact that one of the women that tried to file charges against him and was thrown out, She filed a civil suit against him, and eventually he paid her over $800,000. Sure, she treats women terribly. I mentioned earlier about the way she treats their staff, whether they're male or female. What we're talking about now is what they referred to, the Clintons referred to as the bimbo eruptions when Bill Clinton was running for office. And every one of these women that come forward, no matter what they were sexually harassed or they accused them of rape, no matter what the accusation was, the first thing they do is they go and attack the woman. And then no matter how upstanding a citizen they are, they rip them apart. It's what you get when you drag a $100 bill through an Arkansas trailer park and all these nasty things. And, usually it comes to fruition. Like I said, the one woman that eventually filed a civil lawsuit, our $800,000 settlement, which is very significant. It tells you that there was something there. Of course, if you ever seen the testimony of two women that accused President Clinton of one accuses him of molesting in the Oval Office area was Kathleen Willey. And I'm telling you, this one upset me the most because this woman was a supporter of the Clintons. She was a volunteer. She went over. She had enough clout in the administration to pick up the phone and get an appointment with Bill Clinton. When she goes over to ask him for help with giving her a permanent job because she needed one, a paying job, she says that he sexually took her back to an area just outside the Oval Office, the little hallway by the study area, that he molested her, put his hands on her. When you hear her tell her story, I mean, if it doesn't ring true to you, I'm sorry. Then nobody, then there's no such thing as of that type of behavior. You listen to her, and it just rings so true. And how is it that if anybody else, if you took that same story, went to a police station, showed them a picture of the person who did it, and they listened to your testimony, your statements, just like, and it had the emotion in it that hers did, they would start an investigation. But because it's Bill Clinton, she made it up. She's just trying to get money out of them. And the same with these projects who accused him of a rape. He just has gotten away with everything all these years. And basically because somebody like Mrs. Clinton, who claims to be for supporting women, helps him get away with it. She is like an enabler. She leads the charge to disgrace these women, no matter what it is they've done. And there's plenty of evidence out there to prove that that's right.
You saw this personally. You saw it close up and personal. So when
Sure.
she was dealing with these women, I mean, some of these women she must have encountered directly face to face, like Monica Lewinsky. How did she behave? Tell us some of the stories about her and Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah, so I think that one caught her by surprise. I mean, I believe
By
she
surprise?
knew. Well, I don't mean that he had an affair, but the fact that I don't think she realized that he would have an affair with a girl that was only a few years older than their own daughter. Monica Lewinsky was only 21 years old when that affair started. Now, don't get me wrong. She put herself where she wanted to be. I mean, she was young, but it wasn't like he pursued her at first. It was kind of the other way around. And then they kind of had a mutual agreement. That's the way I saw it. And that's what I ended up testifying to. Keeping in mind that he's a 50-year-old man that's president of the United States, and he's trying to pass off his relationship with this young, flirtatious woman as he's mentoring her. That's what the staff told me.
That's so sexist.
He's mentoring her. I'm thinking to myself when they told me that, I'm like, he's mentoring her? All the people in the world, the president of the United States, all the stuff going on, he's got time to mentor one intern that happens to be the real cutesy, flirtatious intern. Yeah, I find that hard to believe. And but anyway, I didn't believe it at first, but eventually it became very clear that it was true. The thing about with Mrs. Clinton in this case was he told her that it wasn't true. I believe she tried to toe that line at first because when the evidence, the DNA evidence on the blue dress became public knowledge, he couldn't lie anymore. He got caught. And you couldn't make up stories anymore. When DNA ends up on somebody's dress, there had to be some kind of sexual, encounter, something. He came forward and he had to change his story. The way he found out that it was true was he sent his lawyer that was defending him in the Lewinsky case over from the West Wing over to the mansion to tell Mrs. Clinton. And you saw a huge change in her the way she acted and her mood. I mean, she was so angry. There's actually a photograph of some video of them getting off the helicopter the first weekend after she finds out that it's true, and they're coming back from Camp David. And as they walk off the airplane, he grabs her hand, and I'm telling you, the look on her face was unbelievable. It just told the whole story. And that video is available on YouTube. I've seen it recently. All the things you hear about her and them came to fruition. They're true. She is an enabler, and when you hear her say she supports women's rights, don't believe it. It's what they tell her the polling says she's supposed to say. She selects who she supports, and she certainly never helped or took care of any of these women that her husband was accused of molesting or attacking or having affairs with. Yeah, it's a complete falsehood the way she portrays herself.
She's a dictator personality, and look how ruthlessly and violently she's attacked people like Bradley Manning, Julian Assange. You know, when she talks about the deplorables, I think that the rest of us should be afraid. I think she's if she's elected, I think Alex Jones said it very well. He said, if Hillary's elected, she'll send us all to prison. We're all going to prison.
Well, I hope he's wrong, but let's look at some evidence here. I mean, smaller than all of us, but look at this. When they accused a filmmaker of a film of starting the Benghazi attack, they put that American director, the guy that made the film, in jail. How is that? They took his freedom of speech and they jailed him for it. All he did was make a film, and it had nothing to do with the attack of Benghazi. There's an example to look at.
If you know my story very briefly, you know that I was locked up in prison on the Patriot Act while Hillary and George Bush, but it was all the members of Congress, went out and reinvented the story of Iraqi pre-war intelligence. And I was locked up on a military base, so I could not protest. But that was not just Hillary. We're talking now about Hillary as a dictator personality.
Yeah. No, she absolutely is. I cite many examples in my book, Crisis of Character, of her screaming and yelling. And another one that I talk about in the book is when she berated me one Christmas because one of her staff members, there was this group of women up from Arkansas that helped decorate the White House for Christmas. And she wanted to impress them by bringing them over to the Oval Office. And she was going to be over there with them, and I was going to give them a little tour while they were there. And then she was going to leave. And the staff member wanted the president wasn't there at the time. The staff member wanted these women to stay in the Oval Office like a holding room. And I said, no, you can't do that. You have to take them across the street to the Roosevelt room, across the hallway to the Roosevelt room. You have to escort them. It's not I can't escort them. And she berated me, the staff member, I'm going to tell Mrs. Clinton, you don't know what you're doing. You're just a uniformed division officer. So I said, well, those are the rules, and that's the way it is. So a little while later, Mrs. Clinton comes down. She starts berating me. And she uses the same line that she used before. We should have fired you when we first got here, all of you. I'm so tired of working with you a-holes. And it was just
wow.
I didn't take her serious. She's standing there, and she's about 5'5". I'm 6'2", and she's looking up at me and pointing her finger at me and yelling. And it was just comical. So I tried to be as respectful as I could. It's still, you still have to be respectful. Try to remember the position, not the person. When she was done, she said that she was going to call the director or whatever. So I told her before she walked off, I said, ma'am, once they're done, all your staff member has to do is walk them over to the Roosevelt room, and she can escort, and she has to stay with them, but they can stay over there. And I'll leave the doors open so they can stay into the Oval Office if they want to take another look. But she can't hold them in there. And so she walked off in a huff, and a little while later, my phone rang, and it was the inspector of the uniform division. And he said, tell me what's going on. And I walked him through it. And he said, okay, you're going to get a phone call from the director's office. So somebody from the director's office calls me. And, I walked him through it. And he said, Gary, stick to your guns. It's fine. You've handled it well. And that was that. So, but it's just another, and here's a woman who runs on these big government programs. She keeps telling us the bigger the government program, the better. More this, more that. But she doesn't want to ever follow the rules herself. Those rules that I was invoking about bringing people to the Oval Office, they weren't Gary Byrne rules. They weren't Secret Service rules. They were rules based on law on national security law. So here's your first example. One of the early examples.
Hold on.
That's
Magic
right.
words. National security law. Okay, these are absolute guidelines that are just written in stone.
So this is just one of the examples that I cite in my book, Crisis of Character, where it's two sets of rules. There's whatever the Clintons want to do, and then the laws and the rules for everybody else. And there's many, many examples of that. And I try to tell people, listen, I get that everybody wants the first woman to be president of the United States. For me, I was hoping it was going to be Carly Fiorina. But this is not the person you want. She is a complete disaster in everything she touches. Just look at the examples from getting fired in the Watergate investigation to today. She treats people terribly. I just don't understand why it's so hard for people to understand this. If you were trying to explain this, if somebody who's listening to your show, their 25-year-old child came on and described to you that the executive vice president of the ABC, whatever manufacturing company they work for, behaves in this way, either as Hillary or as Bill behaves, especially as Hillary behaves, or especially as Bill behaves with other women, you would tell them to find another job. I mean, nobody should put up with that kind of stress all the time. It's incredible what her staff has to put up with. And I'm telling you, as time goes on and these people end up having to testify more and lawyers and she throws them over the side, the truth's going to come out. And it's going to look just like what I wrote in my book, Crisis of Character, just framed around a different incident. Instead of the stuff that happened when I was there, it's going to be about the email server or about her health or about whatever else scandal leaks up.
Well, here's the question that I cannot understand. And when you're talking, I believe you. I find you entirely credible. But what I cannot understand is why the corporate media is protecting this woman.
Right, because
pardon me, like the Democrats in the DNC forced her onto us. I think there could be a revolution if Hillary Clinton is elected. She should be indicted. Yeah. And I cannot imagine that Barack Obama would be looking at her thinking that she's a great successor when he talks about defending his legacy and how Trump is going to override his legacy. Hillary Clinton's even worse.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to question the sitting president when he says that she's the most fit person that he's ever seen to become president. And that's about the second biggest line of BS that I've ever heard in my life. When you look at her record, she's a complete disaster, if you're honest with yourself.
Give us examples. Give us concrete examples.
Concrete examples of her bad behavior? Well, listen, here's a perfect one. Who is a senator? Who is a first lady for 8 years? A senator for 8 years, and doesn't understand how classified email works. Doesn't understand that you have to use, and this is another example of her not fixing things. If she didn't want to use the State Department secured email server system to message on that like she was supposed to, because it was too old and cumbersome and didn't work right, then fix it. You're supposed to be the leader, not just the leader when it behooves you, not just the leader on Monday, the leader of the State Department all the damn time. And she doesn't. What she did was she did the easy thing. New rules for Hillary Clinton. She sets up a personal server, and she does whatever she wants. And she knows, her staff knows what she's doing is wrong, but everybody's afraid to tell her, which this is all coming out now in these leaked emails. They're afraid to tell her because they don't want to be berated and yelled at and take the chance of getting fired. And that's why you see these people taking the fifth. So that's a perfect example
of why. Breaking the law. Law.
Right. I can't believe Barack Obama is defending her on that. He's just acting like it never happened and just ignoring it. They ignore all the bad stuff and they make up the good stuff. And that's a fact. Oh, she has great experience. Great experience at what? As failure? She has great experience as failure. That's what I see. Her bad behavior. And she supports all her husband's bad behavior. I mean, I have to do both for her because she wants
Give us the examples, though. Give us some examples.
Examples of
her bad behavior, like in your book.
let's
We know
see.
about the
We've got
email server. We know about we all of
right,
that we know from outside. But when you were
right.
in the White House, how did she dominate? Did she try to control Bill Clinton's policy? Did she? How
So
did
when they
that
first,
work?
yeah, so when they first got elected, her big thing was she was going to reinvent healthcare. She was going to have government healthcare. So she gets in there now. Keep in mind, this is very important to understand. She wasn't elected to office. Her husband was. Traditionally, first ladies, they get this kind of position where they're in charge of the White House social office in the West Wing. And they get a staff, and they're in charge of the functions. But oh no, not Hillary Clinton. She's an attorney. She has to also have an office over in the West Wing on the second floor where the legal counsel's office is. And then they give her, she's going to reinvent healthcare for us. So she convenes this group of people. They meet secretly. This is where it goes bad. And this is one of the things you have to look at with then and now. And you see this same pattern. Everything I described to you is a pattern. And the other stuff that I described to you earlier about her behavior with her husband, with women, it's a pattern. And you see it repeated
So
time
yeah,
and time
so
again.
she meets secretly,
Right,
secretly
secretly.
behind
And they're
closed
going to
doors.
and they're not telling anybody who's in there. The press knows what's going on. They're complaining about it. Congress is completely blind with it. Now, how did she think? Now, this is somebody that's supposed to know what she's doing. How did she think that she was going to get something past a Republican-controlled Congress that she's meeting in secret? There's no way. They don't. If they don't know what's in it, and their constituents that support them, that are involved in healthcare, the lobbyists don't know what's in it. They're going to make sure it gets crushed, and that's what they did. When they lost the healthcare fight to have universal healthcare in this country, that's when that's one of the things that sent her over the edge in the beginning, and she became very angry and very vindictive. And you saw her behavior around the staff get worse and worse, where she was berating people for the silliest thing. She gets so angry one time. She's sitting in the limousine on the South Lawn, getting ready to go somewhere with a Secret Service agent. He's sitting up front, and they're waiting for the rest, whoever's coming with her. She's sitting in the car, and for whatever reason, she gets so angry, she takes the Bible that's in her hand, and she punches the agent in the back of the head. Now, I'm sorry.
Punches the agent in the head?
She hits him in the back of the head. She hits him in the back of the head with a Bible. Now, you're going to say, well, Gary, or some people would say, well, Gary, you weren't there. 3 days later, I stood close with this guy, and I said to him, hey, what's going on? I hear something. She blew up the other day, hit somebody. He goes, oh, it was me. He goes, we're sitting on the South Lawn in the car, and she throws a tantrum over something. She had a Bible in her hand, and she leaned forward in the car and hit him in the back of the head. And then he was so caught by so surprised. He was basically attacked. So he did what anybody that does what we do. He spun around in the car, and then, and the best he could because of the way those limousines are set up. And he made it very clear to her that was unacceptable. He reported it, like a lot of the instances I talk about in my book. It's reported, it's investigated by the Secret Service, Internal Affairs from the Uniform Division and the Agent Division. And it happened. And they told him, that's the way it is. She hates us. And I cite other stories, other examples in my book, where one morning a Uniform Division officer is walking down the West Colonnade, and here comes the First Lady. And he's in uniform. And he says to her, good morning, First Lady. And she says, go F yourself. This happened more than once. And see, here's the thing that really, of all the stuff I write about in my book, Crisis of Character, this is the one that bothers me the most. 3 or 4 years before she tells this guy to go F himself, he's in the U.S. Army. And he's deployed to Somalia in one of the early missions. Not the mission we now know as Black Hawk Down, but one of the earlier ones. He's wounded while he's there. He's shot by a sniper. The round goes underneath his body armor. He receives a Purple Heart. 3 or 4 years later, he gets a job at the Uniform Division. And the First Lady, the wife of the man who sent him on that mission, tells him to go F himself. I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. Again, this was investigated. There was actually, when they investigated, they turned up another incident of something similar. They know it was true. And the high-ups in the Secret Service, they talk to this guy, and they're like, hey, listen, we investigated it. We know it's true. We're very sorry, but there's not much we can do about it. And again, they said, you just have to understand, she hates the military. She hates law enforcement. That's just the way she is. That's just another example of her bizarre, angry behavior where she lash out. She's a tyrant. She's a dictator.
She treats ordinary people like crap, like dirt.
Yeah, well, she thinks everybody's ordinary except for her.
Boy, wow. And her friend Sidney Blumenthal. And they are such elitists. They're so closed out they close out the people. They shut us out entirely.
Well, it's funny because a good portion of the emails that are available now that she didn't end up destroying, and she's emailing him all the time. He's not even a real government employee. I mean, there's so much shady stuff going on. You don't even know where to start.
Let's talk. Let's keep going with these internal White House stories, because this is so important. This is so this is so important for people to hear. Just share some more stories.
Another example of her inability to control her anger and emotions, and I tell this story in my book, Rest of the Character. One day I was on the south lawn of the White House. I was on my way back from the shooting range that we used right by the White House, back to my post in the West Wing, and I was cutting along the south lawns, and I stopped to talk to a buddy of mine that was working a post on the southeast side of the south lawn of the White House. And as we're standing there talking, all of a sudden the south door pops open. We look up and we hear somebody say, Evergreen, that was her call sign, South Lawn. And we look, and here she comes walking out. She's got a baseball cap on and like workout clothes, like the sweatpants, and sunglasses on, and she's screaming and yelling, and she's throwing her hands up in the air, and she's cursing. And we're looking at each other laughing like, oh, great, here we go. And I'm like, man, I wish I'd gone right back to post. But anyway, so here she comes down the south lawn, and she's screaming and yelling, and my coworker notices right away that there's no agents with her. So he goes over the radio and said, be advised, there's no protection agents with the First Lady. And they come right back over, and they said, we're aware of it, and they're on their way. So that quick, this agent comes running out. He literally still has food in his mouth. He was obviously eating his lunch. And he's wearing a suit, and he throws his hands up in the air and looks at us like, oh, my God, here we go again. What is it with this person? And now she's getting closer to the gate, and my coworker, he's supposed to open the gate and let her out. You can't really refuse to let them out, but you have to stay with him. So he's trying to take as much time as he can to let these guys catch up. So she's almost to the gate. The agent in the suit is about halfway down, and then 2 or 3 other guys come running out in sweat clothes, and they're jogging towards the situation. So the guy opens the gate. Now, this story I'm telling you demonstrates a couple of things. It demonstrates her lack of respect for the Secret Service and for law enforcement. It demonstrates her recklessness and endangering other people. And what I mean by that is, if she leaves the complex, as she's leaving that complex and trying to ditch her details, what she's trying to do, because she's so angry she can hardly even function, she's risking her life. She's risking endangering the agents. And then she's also risking the public's life and endangering the public. Because if you were in that park and you looked up and you saw Hillary Clinton come out and you went running over there to say hi, and as the Secret Service details coming out and they see you running towards her, they're going to treat you as a threat until they know you're not. And that's the way things get escalated accidentally and accidents happen. And that's just one example of her doing one of these bizarre things.
She knows this.
Yeah, oh, sure. Well, listen, she's supposed to know everything, right? Isn't she the smartest?
No. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, exactly. She's supposed to know everything because she's the smartest lady in the room. And now, but she doesn't know about. But she would treat people so carelessly. Oh.
Right. It's just another example of her not following any guidelines or rules. It's just incredible the stuff that people were exposed to when they worked there.
Well, okay. Now, I want to. A lot of people in our chat room want to talk about the bimbos and I'm using that word sarcastically and with chagrin, because I realize that the women Bill Clinton's women. Oh, what is it about women wanting to be with Bill Clinton? I don't understand.
Power thing. It's a power thing, and he's so incredibly charming. And I've had experiences when I worked there where I literally got to introduce my parents to him one time and some friends of ours. I never really understood how charming he was and how he could manipulate people. So I introduced him to people I did. And I knew some of them despised his politics. And oh my God, it was just the funniest thing you ever saw in your life. I mean, I introduced him to a friend of mine that at one time was the lead fundraiser for the Republican Party in the state of Virginia. And she was just so, because he's still the president, but she was just bowled over by his charm at first. And then later on, actually, when we left, she said she wanted to wash her hands. She shook his hand. It was a joke. She said that. But anyway,
Yeah.
they. So
He's so charming. So he's
yeah,
charming. He's extra exudes
yeah,
charm, sex appeal,
yeah,
and she exudes anger and bitterness. How do they
yeah.
stay together?
Well, I don't think. I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion about their relationship. Me personally, I don't think she really had. I mean, I'm no psychologist, but I am, or a doctor, but I'm an expert observer, and I've observed many people over long periods of time, and I've observed them for 8 years, and based on what I know is normal human, they didn't act like my parents act towards each other. They don't act like my wife and I act towards each other. I think he has some genuine feelings for her. I think there's seriously something altered about her. I don't think she really has that feeling type thing. I don't see her ever. I've never seen anything I could even remotely say was like a warm, tender moment with anybody. Where him, I can say that. I've seen him act emotional, and I've seen him, and I mean I've seen him. I was there one time when some children that were fighting cancer came to visit, and he took some time out of his day to visit with them. And this one child had some severe health issues. She had a severe brain tumor. They had to remove part of her brain, and she functioned very slowly. And I stood there, and I watched him interact with her. I don't like his politics, but he does have some heart and some feeling. I could see he was emotionally affected by her story. I've never seen Mrs. Clinton function in that way. That's just my experience with him. She's cold, she's calculating, and everything is about politics. And everything is poll-driven, what's most popular. And you see that in many examples. There's many examples on the internet, on Facebook and on YouTube of examples of things she said years ago, and then videotape of her saying the exact opposite now. She says whatever is popular at the time. You don't know really what her true beliefs are.
Yeah, you don't. But here's what I'm confused about, and why is the media tolerating this? If we've seen the media cover for her again and again and again. We even have seen Green's empty rooms and empty convention halls where the media has been in the back of the room filming her as if this was a real event. But the room itself was empty, and then they did a green screen on the video so that they could add the crowds and add the flags and later on. And so, they had like a staged performance. Why would any corporate media do this? Why would they participate in this?
Well, there's many reasons. One of them is a lot of them are friends. They contribute to the Clinton Foundation, which looks like nothing more than almost like a criminal element itself. I mean, all these foreign countries are donating to this foundation, and what do they owe them for that money? And the same with all these agencies, these ABC, NBC, a lot of these people who run these companies personally donate to it. Some of these people socialize with the Clintons quite often. There's been proof of that. And they're liberals. They're liberals like the Clintons are, or they're even more liberal. And they stick together. And they're clearly, I mean, in some cases, they're almost the definition of the word sycophant. They're just somebody who supports them no matter what, all the way to the end as they fall off the cliff. And there's many examples of that. I mean, the fact that they folded to the pressure to blacklist me. My book was 5 weeks on the New York Times it was number one on the New York Times list. It's in its 11th week now, and I'm still on the list at number 19. And nobody outside of Fox and Inside Edition has interviewed me. If my book was about a conservative instead of a Democrat, they would be carving my face on the side of Mount Rushmore, the liberals, and the media, mainstream media. But because, oh my God, I'm telling the truth about the Clintons. Oh my God, I'm a terrible person. And I get it. I knew what I was in for when I decided to do this. But my main motivation for doing this is because I want the American people to know the truth. And here's a couple of things I want your listeners to understand. Everything that comes out of their mouth is a lie. Always consider that. I'm not saying it always is, but consider it that it is, and then back up from there. Check the facts. This latest scandal with her, or this latest issue with her health, nobody would have any idea that she had that issue if it wasn't for one guy standing there with a camera phone. They tried to hide the whole thing, and then when we leaked out, they started telling, again, here's the Clinton modus operandi. It never happened. Oh, she didn't feel good. She was, because it was hot. Well, it turns out it was only about 78 degrees. And then, well, that's not good. Oh, it's pneumonia. She may have pneumonia, but what I witnessed, I actually did an op-ed on this health issue. What I saw is not something, it's something I've seen similar to before, and I talked about in this op-ed I did for the IJR review. But she is, everything you hear from them is a lie. Consider that. They spin everything. It's just, I don't believe anything out of their mouth until I see it, and even then I question.
Yeah, question everything. Because what they do is they doctor the documents that would support, they obstruct justice. They make false statements. Yes. It's
it certainly looks
justice.
like that. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It certainly looks like that. During her husband's presidency in the 90s, there were 19 scandals he was involved in. When you look back at his record, and like I said, when we elected Bill, we got Bill and Hillary, and if we elect Hillary, we're going to get Hillary and Bill. Are we already in the scandal mode? Benghazi, the email server, we're already in that mode. And then we have, who knows what the next scandal is going to be? The health, I guess, will be her health scandal that she's manipulating and trying to lie about, and so what's the next thing? So do we really want another 4 to 8 years of one scandal to the next? I mean, they're so scandal-ridden, it's incredible.
Well, I mean, it's not just Benghazi, it's the stupidity of her bad judgment going into Libya in the first place. And it's the stupidity of going into Syria in the first place. Syria is Hillary Clinton's foreign policy. Libya is Hillary Clinton's foreign policy. She has destroyed 2 countries, and now look at the crisis in Europe. This just goes on and on and on, and she's really pushed us into a situation where there will be war in Europe. It is coming. My Libya sources say they expect the war in Libya in 12 to 18 months to explode and become a regional war. I don't want to go off on that too much, except to say, first, she's got no success record. If you look at her credentials in foreign policy, she's a disaster.
Everything she touched turns to manure. It's unbelievable.
Okay.
And people want to give her a promotion. They want to give her a promotion. She's one of the most controversial failed Secretary of State ever. She doesn't even know how to operate it. She can't even operate her email server without violating hundreds of security regulations and laws. And she wants a promotion. It's insane.
Yeah, you rise to your highest level of mediocrity. Well, now let's come back to what you saw. I really want to talk about Monica Lewinsky, because there's some stories that you, I think it comes out of your book, or at least it comes out at the same time as your book, that Monica Lewinsky would be coming down the hallway and people would be trying to divert Hillary away from, so they wouldn't run into each other?
So my first time running into her, I'm stationed outside the Oval Office, and then my post was 3 years. I was 3 years outside the Clinton Oval Office. I protected him the whole 8 years, but for about the first 3 years, roughly, I was stationed outside the Oval Office. And that officer's responsibility is to make sure everybody coming back and forth that has the right pass on. They're supposed to be there. They're supposed to be in that area. They also have the officer there who monitors all the alarms for the different parts of the West Wing and that kind of stuff. And there's some other responsibilities that I won't really go into. But anyway, so one day, one of my coworkers says, "Hey, have you met this intern, Monica, yet?" I go, "Yeah, she's kind of a nuisance. She keeps trying to come down the hallway. She's not even supposed to be over in the West Wing because she's an intern." But the Clinton administration had asked us, and this kind of came up to haunt us a couple times in my time working with them, was they started using this term user-friendly. They want us to be more user-friendly, the Secret Service to be more user-friendly, which translates to, we want you to do what we tell you to do when we tell you to do it. And one of the things they wanted us to do was to allow interns that were supposed to stay over in the old executive office building to come over to the West Wing at times to deliver stuff, to bring food to people, that kind of thing. So anyway, to help their bosses have more help or whatever, servants, whatever you want to call it. So Monica, based on what I saw, she took advantage of this. She was trying to get over, and at first I just thought she was somebody who was trying to get a leg up, so to speak. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean like she was, or maybe that was a bad terminology. I should have picked something else. But anyway, she was trying to, get a better job. She was an intern. Maybe she was trying, she was a young person. She had some education, and I can understand that. But after a while, she became such a nuisance that I actually, I went to the deputy chief of staff at the time. Evelyn Lieberman was one of President Clinton's deputy chiefs of staff. And Evelyn Lieberman was actually the first female woman chief of staff in the history of the country. She was a very nice lady. She was tough. I liked her a lot. I had a good rapport with her. So Monica was, going and coming, and then eventually it became obvious there might be something going on between her and the president based on some of the things I heard from the other officers where they were caught in compromising positions. And so I went to Evelyn. I knew I was kind of stepping over my bounds, but I felt like I was trying to do the right thing to kind of protect the president from, I guess, his own behavior and get her out of the way. So I went to Evelyn Lieberman, and I talk about this in my book, Courses of Character. And I went up to her assistant, who knew me very well, and she said, "Hey, how are you?" And I said, "Good. Can I get 2 minutes with Evelyn sometime the next day, whenever?" She goes, "Come back in 5 minutes. You can have all the time you want." So I came back, and I walked up, and she pointed me right in. I knocked on the door. I walked in, and Evelyn was sitting in her chair, and she said, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "I'm going to ask you to do something for me. I can't really give you any details, but I think you should do it. It would behoove the administration. Please don't ask me to describe why. I can't give you the details, but and if you once I tell you what it is, if you think I've overstepped my bounds, then you should report me and have me removed. But I think something needs to be done here." So she said, "What is it?"
You're doing something good. Why should anybody want to remove you? You're doing the right thing.
Well,
You're trying to protect the president.
Well, that's I wanted her to understand me, and that, if she thought I was maybe, I don't know exactly what's going on. Maybe she knows what's happening. I don't know. So anyway, I said, "Do you know the intern, Monica Lewinsky?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay. Is there any way you can have her removed from coming into the West Wing? She's becoming a nuisance. I just can't go into the details, but if I'm taking this, you should understand. I think you understand that I have you, the staff, and to protect these best interests at heart." And she said, "I'll look into it." And then she was removed about a week. And then next thing you know, there's Monica coming down the hallway. I'm standing post again. I see her coming down the hallway from the chief of staff office, actually right past Evelyn Lieberman's office. And she's walking, and she's holding her pass straight out in front of her. And she's got a hard blue White House pass, which gives her access to anywhere in the White House with the exception of the private living quarters. And I'm like, holy crap, this is going to blow to my face. And I thought, oh, shit, when people find out I'm the one that got her removed, now she comes back with a blue White House pass. She's got some clout. The rumors are true. There's something going on here. And now it did backfire on me. Well, I guess it backfired on me later on. But so then now she has a pass. And she walks up to me and goes, "Look, I have a blue pass now." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's great. Okay." And, there's not much you can do then. And she pretty much, now her story of why she comes over all the time has changed. Now it's not about mentoring. Now she's friends with Betty Curry, the president's secretary. And that's how they keep this thing going until it blows up in their faces.
But you tried to stop it.
I did. I tried to stop her, and then I did something else one time where the Navy steward that takes care of the president, feeds him lunch and stuff, gets him water, takes care of the president's guests. He's a Navy steward. There's a couple of them. This one particular Navy steward, he came to me one day, and it wasn't the first time we'd had this discussion like this, but clearly the president had just had somebody in his study where they had some kind of sexual relation. There was towels with lipstick one time, tissues with lipstick, and then there was a hand towel that had a man's bodily fluid in it. And that's what it appeared to be. And based on what we knew from before, that's probably what it was. So Nellis the steward was angry, he was embarrassed. I said to him, "Where do these towels go?" And he said, "Well, they go downstairs and the guys wash them." I said, "Well, we're going to know what this is. So let's do this. You can spare the towels, the Navy can." So I went and got a plastic bag. I had them throw the towels into the plastic bag, and I destroyed them. Now, this is before I knew there was an investigation going on. But when the subpoenas started flying and the story got out, I was very concerned that it might be looked at as destroying evidence. Of course, it wasn't.
Because you
it
did
was a
not
very
know,
bizarre
you
thing.
did not know that there was an
No,
investigation at that
no,
point.
I was just trying to protect his reputation. If they saw those towels, there'd be more rumors flying around, and there was always more rumors about this guy, and they always became true. I mean, it was just crazy.
What about the story of what is it, Eleanor Mondale, the daughter of Walter Mondale?
Walter Mondale, that's right. Yeah. So now Eleanor Mondale, I just wanted to point out that Eleanor, unfortunately, she's passed away. She got sick and she couldn't recover from her cancer. So I just wanted to say that. I'm not comfortable about talking about her, but it is true. It did happen. And she always denied that they had an affair, but here's what I saw.
Eleanor Mondale, and you said that she had died and that she always denied it, that she had an affair during her lifetime, that she denied it with Bill Clinton, but it turns out it was true, correct?
Well, here's what I saw. And again, I was getting ready to say before we went to the commercial break was that, when it comes to defining stuff, you have to watch the Clintons. This is a guy that tried to redefine what the word is. So one day, the story is that one day I was, what I witnessed is I was walking from the east side of the White House back to the west side to go back to my post. I had to eat lunch on the other side. So I stopped at the ground floor post right outside the map room. It took place around Christmas one year. I was talking to my buddy, the officer stationed there, and the agent that was there. And as we're talking, the Navy steward walks up. And because the agent's there, I know that the president, and because I listened to the radio, I know the president was in the map room in a meeting, supposedly. So as I'm standing there, a steward comes walking up, another steward, and he has a clean shirt for the president. It's in the evening. It's probably around 6 o'clock. He's got other events, so he's going to give him a clean shirt to change into. So if the steward goes to open the door in the map room, he's looking at us because we're talking to him and joking with him. And as he opens the door, we're looking at him, but past him into the room. And there's Bill Clinton and Eleanor Mondale standing face to face, making out like high school seniors. They never looked up. We were standing there looking at him for a good 15, 20 seconds went by. The steward is looking at us. When he sees the look on our faces, he turns around, looks into the room, sees what he sees, the same thing we're looking at. He gets all embarrassed. He closes the door and he runs down the hallway. So I look at the agent. He looks at me. I look at the officer. We all laughed and we said, Merry Christmas, another day at the White House. And that was just another example of the crazy stuff you see.
So the door was open, and you're able to look through the White House door to see what's going on in the. Oh boy!
Right. The steward opened the door into the map room.
Oh.
That was my experience with her.
How did they ever? That was with Eleanor Mondale. Now,
right.
How did they ever get work done? How did they ever get any work done with all this scandals and all this sex and?
When you look back in hindsight, they didn't get a lot done, in my opinion. But, what they did get done turned into disasters. What wasn't a scandal was a failed attempt at something. You mentioned Waco earlier. There was the failed attempt in Somalia to squash the civil war. I mean, it was just crazy.
The failed attempt in Bosnia. There was a lot of mistakes, and the economy was pretty much growing because of its own growth. It was not driven by Clinton at all.
I'm no economist, but I'm
some of the things that have happened, that the long-term effects that we've seen, like the repeal of Glass-Steagall, allowing banks to become major investors in the stock market, turned out to destabilize the banks at a very serious level that has threatened repeatedly to demolish our economy. We saw it in 2008. That's one of the failures of the Clinton administration, the first Clinton administration. All of the drug laws, the draconian drug laws and life sentences for first-time offenders that President Obama is now trying to cure by, and I think it's humane, commuting some of the sentences of these people who did not commit violent crimes. Some of these people have been sentenced to longer sentences than murderers or rapists. again, the behavior in the White House is so important.
Yeah.
There's a story right now that's come out that when the Clintons were leaving the White House, they sort of looted it. Could you describe the thefts, the transition, the pettiness, writing on nasty notes on the bathroom doors, trashing the
Yeah.
offices? Would you describe that for us, please?
Yeah, sure. So, of course, here's what the truth is, and I'll tell you what the news reported, and then I'll tell you what the truth was. The mainstream media reported that, just as a joke, when one administration leaves and another one comes in, they do things like they move the keys on the keyboards of the computers, and they remove the W's because President Bush's was referred to as W. And the truth is, they did do that, and they did a lot of other things that were actually considered vandalizing and theft. In the old executive office building, now known as the Eisenhower building, this giant old beautiful building that used to be the Department of Navy and Department of State at one time. At the bottom of each stairwell, they have these huge marble stairwells, and they have these giant mahogany railings, beautiful woodwork. And at the bottom, there's this brass fitting, and on each one of these metal fittings is an insignia for the Navy or whatever department that stairwell led up to originally. And these are big fittings. You just can't, and they're custom made. You just can't go and buy these at Home Depot. They have these insignias engraved in them, and they're cast at metal. They're beautiful. Well, they stole them on some of the railings. They spun them off. They stole them. And
they stole them.
Yeah.
The
outgoing staff stole them. And of course, the mainstream media is like, "Oh, it's just prank." Well, it's not a prank. You're destroying government property. You're stealing government property and destroying. That's a historic landmark, that building.
So it's like it is a historic landmark, and it's defacing and destroying a beautiful public building, one of the most beautiful buildings in Washington.
Yes, it is. It's incredible. So that's I saw that. I saw a lot of other things, and I actually when the Clintons first got in there, I saw issues with defacing government property that I talk about in my book, Crisis of Character. I tell the story about that one night I'm standing post and these two gentlemen walk up, and the Clintons had just gotten in there. They'd only been in a couple of days. They had only been in a couple of days, and they hadn't set up the rule. They hadn't set up what their staff wanted as far as allowing employees to do tours and stuff. If you work at the White House, you have a White House pass. At certain times, the administration you work for will allow you to do tours. And they give the Secret Service Uniform Division the guidelines as far as what time, and then we allow the tours. But anyway, this guy comes walking up, and he was kind of short and heavy set, and he had this really beautiful necklace on. It was like a leather cord, and then around it were these large metal rings of all different colors. And next to him was a friend who was real tall and skinny, and they were dressed kind of shabbily, but it was in the evening. It was no big deal. So the guy comes walking up, and he sticks his thumb underneath the necklace, like pushes it up towards my face, and he gets really kind of close. Definitely too close for somebody like me who's in the law enforcement and I like my space. And I tried to take a step back, and I laughed, and I said, "Can I help you?" And he goes, "This is my gay freedom necklace." That's what he called it.
My
gay
what?
Freedom necklace.
My
gay freedom necklace. And I said, "Oh, okay." I mean, I guess he thought because I was a cop, I was homophobic or something. And I just kind of laughed. I said, "Well, okay, good for you. What are you going to say?" So they're looking around. They're looking in the Oval Office, and the guy he goes to put his hand on the rope like to walk in there, and I stop him. I go, "You can't go in there." He goes, "Oh, I thought I was allowed in there." I go, "No, you're not." So I looked at his pass, and I go, "As a matter of fact, you only have a temporary pass because you're new. So you really shouldn't be in here right now, but I'll allow it for now." I was trying to do the right thing. And
you're being friendly. You're being friendly, and he's already been in there, and yeah.
Sure. So anyway, they say a couple more things, and the guy said something about when they're going to be allowed to do more tours, and I said, "Well, that's going to be up to the staff, the people that run your administration." And he goes, "Well, we set the rules." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, whatever. I'm not going to get in a fight with this guy." So anyway, they start walking down the hallway towards It would be
We
like
make the rules. I'm trying to wrap myself around this. That he
oh,
walks into the White House and he's like,
yeah,
You're the Secret Service." He's like, "Well, we make the rules."
yeah,
Wow.
I have a better story. I have a better story after this one. So as they're walking down the hallway towards the chief of staff's office in the west direction, I see the skinny guy. He's sticking stickers on the walls and sticking stickers on the priceless furniture. And I almost had a conniption fit. And I yelled down the hallway. I raised my voice. I'm like, "Stop doing what you're doing." And they stopped. And I came walking down there, and I said, "What are you doing?" And I look, and they're gay Freedom Prime stickers. I'm like, "You cannot do that." And he's like, "Well, we set the rules now, and this
Oh
place is
no,
being changed."
you
Like,
do
no.
not
I'm like,
face.
"No, it's not." I went over the radio, and I called the sector sergeant, and a sergeant came over and another officer. I explained what was happening. They saw the stickers, and they escorted these guys out. Now, I never saw them back in the West Wing
That
again.
is desecration. Desecration
Yeah,
of public property. Wow. That is so
yeah,
rude and ugly. I don't care if they're
yeah.
gay. I don't care if they're black. I don't care what they are. You don't desecrate property like that.
They go, they disappear. I don't see them again. But we just couldn't rip the stickers off. So when the sergeant comes back, I'm like, he goes, "Aren't you going to take them off?" I'm like, "No, I'm going to call the cleaning service, GSA, and the mansion guys, the people over at the mansion who take care of the White House furniture stuff. Because if we start ripping this off, we're liable to rip off the finish, and So anyway, they
Good
came
thought.
over. They
Good
looked at
idea. Good thought. How many of these
it. Yeah,
stickers did they put on?
probably about 7, maybe 9 before I stopped them. And then, the sergeant came back back then the state of the art was Polaroid cameras. So he took some Polaroid pictures. So that was the last I saw of them. But it was just another example of all these young people that the Clintons came in with this anarchy type attitude or rebellious attitude and no respect for anything. I mean, who the heck would stick stickers on priceless furniture? And if you're not smart enough to know that everything in the White House is priceless, then you're probably in the wrong place.
That's a good story. It's a terrible story.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I have another one for you.
Please.
Yeah. About the same time frame. It was during the weekday, and they'd probably been in office. The Clintons probably about a month or so. Things are starting to gel, that kind of thing. So all of a sudden, I'm getting ready to go on break. My relief comes. We exchange the information like we're supposed to, and I'm getting ready to go to lunch. And I hear, as I'm walking away, the control center comes over the radio and says, available West Wing officer to respond to unknown person at the pool. So I answered up. I said, "Byrne, I'll take care of it." They said, "Officer Byrne, go directly to the pool. There's an unknown male. Check it out." So I go out through the West Colonnade. I cut across the grass. I go up to the pool area, and there's this young gentleman in a nice suit. He's got his shoes off, his socks off. He's got his pants rolled up, and he's got his feet in the president's pool. So
He's got his feet in the president's pool?
yeah. So I'm looking at him, and I'm like, "Hi." And he goes, "Hi. How are you?" And I go, "I'm good, and you?" And he says, "Fine." And he's leaning back on his arms, looking up at the sky, and he goes, "Isn't this great? Isn't this great? We did it. We're here now." I'm like, "Yeah, you did it." I said, "Who are you?" He goes, "I'm so-and-so, whatever." And I said, "Listen, do you have a pass?" He goes, "Oh, it's in my desk. I don't need to wear it." I'm like, "Oh, really? Okay." I said, "Where's your desk or your office?" "Oh, it's over in the old executive office stuff." And I'm like, "Okay." And so I'm trying to figure out how he got over here. Clearly, he got over. It turned out that he came over with a group of higher up people for a meeting. And then when they left and went back over, he stayed over here. It turns out he was a little goofy. So anyway.
Yeah, goofy would be the word. Wow.
Yeah, no kidding, right? So he's standing there, he's sitting there, and I walk away a little bit, and I go over the radio, and I said, the control center at the time, their call sign was Bandbox. I said, "Bandbox, Byrne." I said, "Would you please send somebody from the ERT or a sector sergeant and an officer? I need somebody escorted out." And they came back over and said, "Who is the individual at the pool?" I said, "He works in the old executive office building."
A nutcase.
Yeah. Yeah. So we ran his name. It came back that he was a temporary employee. He was in the process of being hired. So anyway, sergeant comes over. I said, "You're gonna have to get up now." He goes, "Well, I'm not done yet." So they come over. Basically,
I'm
they
not
pick him up.
done yet? Oh,
Yeah.
no.
So they pick him up by his arms and he grabs his shoes and his socks and they walk him down to the southwest gate, and that was the last I ever saw of him. I never did see him again. So that was just another example of craziness stuff that happened when they first got in there.
I was in Washington when the Clintons first came into power, and they brought a lot of very, very young 20-year-olds,
Yeah.
21, 22, 23-year-olds. And I remember thinking I was 30. I was 30.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
there's no room for us. And at that point, I'd been a Democrat for many years, and I'd been fighting to get, I am a Democrat. So I'd been fighting
Mm-hmm.
against Reagan and
Mm-hmm.
fighting against Bush Senior,
Right.
and just as an activist. And there was no room in the Clinton White House for us. And I was like, but
Yeah.
I'm just a little bit older than you. Why am I being shut out, but you're being allowed in? And but they did. They were like, anybody else who's not on the Clintons were really weird like that.
Yeah, I think I always got the impression that part of that was, the way you just described it. Part of that was because they were cheaper. They paid them as little as possible, and I always got that impression because they always did. They always tried to do so much with interns that they didn't pay anything. They always tried to, like I told the story about an intern that they gave the responsibility of ordering stationery for the White House and ended up making a mistake. And they ordered, tens of thousands of dollars worth of stationery that was useless. So I always thought, as far as them hiring young people, part of the reason was because they could get them cheap. So that was just my impression.
You could get them cheap. They could get them cheap. Yeah, well, they didn't get very good quality people.
Yeah, there was.
I
don't
have
get
to
me wrong.
tell you, for everybody, I just got to
Sure.
interject this story here. People,
Sure, go ahead.
we remember what you're hearing. For those of you who are young and you don't remember the Clintons from the past, and you're thinking, oh, Hillary's so great. How could anybody criticize Hillary? Hillary and Bill were a nightmare. It was one scandal after another, and it was always an abuse of power, always like the White House travel office, always abusing people who had been trying to reinvent how they were going to do things that would be a little bit dirty. And it was always dirty. It was always Hillary Clinton having a fundraiser, and Bill and Hillary having a fundraiser for a cause. And the cause would be like, not global warming, the rainforest, the Amazon rainforest. And then they'd call up the people from the Amazon rainforest and say, we want 30% of the take from last night. Give us your 30% take. And that was the kind of thing that we all had to deal with. And then they would do it illegally. They would do it in such an illegal manner that the person who bowed to Hillary Clinton's demand to give them the money, that person would end up going to prison. Now, people, think about this. The person who's on the receiving end of this phone call is receiving an order from the White House to do something, and so they obey the order from the president and the first lady, and it turns out it's illegal, and so the person who obeys the first lady ends up going to jail. Okay, that person goes to prison, and their life is destroyed. Their career is destroyed because they've just broken the law. Now they're felons. Now the little guy who's just obeyed Hillary, who's just, oh, I better do what Hillary says because she's the first lady, and if the White House says so, I better do it. That person ends up in jail. That's another story, is that when Hillary when you get arrested for obeying Hillary, Hillary disappears. Hillary doesn't come and give you a character reference. Hillary doesn't say, hey, guys, I told him to do that. I'm really sorry. She has her, like all these people who are in the server, the email server, and she's telling them to save her. They will eventually they should be prosecuted. If it wasn't Barack Obama and Loretta Lynch, those people would be prosecuted for obstruction of justice and making false statements to the FBI. Those are very serious crimes. If you and I break the law like that, we get like 5 or 6 or 10 years in prison. But when Hillary's people do it, they, Hillary gets them in trouble, then she disappears. That's my story. We have 5 minutes left in the show, and this has been a great
Sure.
show. I want everybody to hear, where do we get your book? Tell us about
Sure.
where we can find your website, where we can hear you, etc.
Sure. So my book, Crisis of Character, can be found at any normal bookstore that you buy books from, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million stores. You can also order it online at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and just about any other type of store that sells books. My website, you can go on. You can Google my name, Gary, GaryByrne, and it'll bring up all the links to my YouTube site, my Facebook book page, and then it gives you all my names for Twitter and on Facebook. And if you want to message me, you can actually message me on my Facebook page. And I greatly appreciate the time to tell everybody about my book, Crisis of Character, and take this information and use it, get educated with it, and vote your conscience.
Well, I gotta say, everybody, this is a fantastic, tremendously important book, and I recommend literally buy 5 copies, keep one for yourself, and read it. Every American citizen who's considering voting for Hillary Clinton, and I know our audience is not in that category, but give it to your friends, give it to your family members, get the word out. This lady is corrupt, she is dictatorial, she is ruthless, she breaks every law. The laws are for the other people, for the little people, and she has no respect for anybody. In closing, what do you think is the most important thing for people to know about Hillary as her character, as far as her character?
Her character is horrendous. It is all bad, and I base that on the 8 years that I protected them and what I saw, the way I saw her treat people around her, the way I saw her treat her husband, the way that he treated her, the bizarre relationship they have, the way that she treated the Secret Service, the way she treated the military. This is somebody who's angry, distant, and cold. And then if you take what I'm telling you right now and you put it together with the things you've seen her do, just as Secretary of State, and if you Google her name and you look back in the early 1970s when she got fired from investigating President Richard Nixon because they said she was dishonest, and then you fast forward, this is somebody you do not want to give. She's a failed Secretary of State at best. You do not want to give this woman a promotion.
Yeah, do not give her a promotion. And if she was elected, given her personality, I think Alex Jones got it right. They said, matter of factly, if she's elected, we're all going to prison. Because it's
going to be a bad time.
A bad time for any dissidents, for any free voices in America.
Yeah, I agree. So that's my take on it.
Well, do you think that's overstating it? Do you think that she is capable?
Well, listen, I've already seen. We've already seen her involved in jailing the gentleman who made this. They blamed that video for the attack of Benghazi on that video. We saw him jailed. She was involved in that, along with President Obama. Listen, the things that I've seen happen and that I talk about in my book, Crisis of Character, nothing would surprise me.